I never know how many people are going to show up. I appreciate everybody showing up. Whether there's one or two of you, the show must go on, right? Or there's 30 or 15 or whatever. This is a free event. I'm not promoting anything. I'm not selling anything. This was actually an idea. This came from an idea with Michael Zuber originally to really focus in on Fresno, California, to build a community, a realtor community in Fresno around Michael Zuber's. He has an office called The Hub. Most of you know Michael. What's up, Joe Perez? Good to see you, brother. Glad you're here. Welcome, Vanessa. Welcome. Bendy, I see you. Ray, I see you. Thanks for being here. I love it. So this was an idea. Michael Zuber, a few of you may not know, most of you do. Michael Zuber is one of the biggest, investors in California. That's, a true, individual mom and pop. Him and his wife, they own plus or minus 200 doors. So in Fresno, California, he's very successful. And he was a civilian. When I say civilian, what does that mean? He's not a realtor, doesn't have a real estate background, was not an appraiser, was not a fix and flip guy. I mean, he had a W-2 corporate America job, and him and his wife, and he's not a billionaire or one of these multi-gajillionaires or multi-millionaire. Well, he is now, but he wasn't back then when he was working in Silicon Valley. He wasn't one of these, overnight, Facebook or, Silicon Valley ultra millionaire, billionaire type dudes. He was a regular corporate guy making good money, smart with his money, but he bought a lot of rentals. And so he has an office in Fresno, California called The Hub, there by Fresno Community College. And what he wants to do really is his mission is to build a community, a real estate community of investors, realtors, lenders, hard money people, fix and flippers, contractors, all of that. So he has a tremendous amount of love for Fresno, California. So we initially offered this class out to realtors in Fresno, California. And there's a handful of you are from the market. So thank you for being here. Although the response was light, in my opinion. So I said, you know what? Let me just throw it out there for everybody. So some of you are already a part of other communities that I'm involved in, whether that be Sub2, Evo, stuff I do with Adrian, all the above. But really, this is all about goodwill. So again, not Goodwill the store, right? Goodwill is in, I want to just create, a tremendous amount of impact with the community and give and, contribution. So nothing to sell. There will be no upsell here. There will be no course at the end. Oh, it's a surprise. I'm doing a workshop. Oh, surprise. I've got a mentorship. Surprise. I got a course for you to buy. I'm not going to sell anything. Right. But what I will do is there is one added benefit. If you do have deals, creative deals, would love to joint venture with you, help you with those deals, partner with you on those deals, whatever, help you with them, even if you just have questions. But really, this is all about community. So again, that was the fluff. I spent the first 5 minutes kind of rephrasing that for some of you that hadn't heard that. I want to open it up. Does anybody have any burning questions before we get started? You can either raise your hand or just unmute yourself. So you see there in the reactions tab, I have the ability to use emojis and do reactions. I also have the ability to raise my hand. It's not necessary. If you're not able to raise your hand, that's okay too. But let's go ahead. Does anybody have any questions? They want to raise their hand? Just any burning questions at all. So I want to make sure that I'll start off quick. And I do have a presentation, so please.
Hi, Ty. How you doing? This is Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for being here.
What's that? I'm sorry?
Thank you for being with us.
Oh, yeah, of course. When I saw the course on Michael's channel, I'm like, hey, this looks great. So, a lot of investors, what happens is sometimes they'll purchase a property with the tenant in place. Yep. And what's your most successful experience in removing the tenant, whether it be like cash for keys? Because in California now, with that new prop, was it AB 1482? Sure. Our hands are kind of tied in certain situations.
Well, I think always, what market is the property in?
So I'm in the Fresno area, so it'd be investors here in the Fresno area.
Okay. The only reason I ask is because I know there's a lot of overlays like in LA County, Alameda County, Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco. There's overlays of rent control that are super, super, super tight and very, very restrictive and very unfriendly, in my opinion, to landlords and property owners. So that's important to know thy market, right? So if you are in a market like LA or the markets, San Francisco, Oakland, markets I just described, or regardless, even if you're somewhere in the country, you want to understand if there are any local government or state government overlays of tenant landlord conditions, things like that. So that's number one. Always know the rules. Okay. Always know those rules. And what I would encourage you to do is that the answer is yes. We've done cash for keys. We've done relocation assistance. We've done, moving assistance. I'm calling it different things because potentially it could represent different things. We have even, said to tenants or occupants, hey, look, I know that the local guidelines are restrictive for, relocation assistance or cash for keys, but I'll tell you what if I could give you $10,000 and buy some of your patio furniture, or buy that broken down car in the driveway that I'm going to eventually have to tow away anyway. So I mean, I'm saying there's, again, and I'm not suggesting that you do anything that's going to compromise or get you in trouble, but I'm saying you really need to know the local municipality, the local government rules. That's number one. Also, in any market, when you're dealing with tenants and, tenants all day long, you want to find the keyword, the expert in that market that is pro landlord, pro property owner, that really understands these rules and guidelines as an attorney, the attorney and or the real estate brokerage, property manager and or both that really know these guidelines that can hold your hand. Okay. I have a Rolodex of those people and it's kind of always changing. It used to be a global market. When I say global, meaning I could have one attorney and he could handle 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 different counties locally around where I'm buying and selling properties. Today, that's not true. I've got one guy and he handles 2 or 3 counties. I've got another guy, he handles 2 or 3 counties. I've got another guy or gal, they only do one county, that local county where they live. So it's important that you get the right guidance with landlords and with attorneys and eviction rules. So usually what I find is having a conversation with the occupant, the tenants, always goes well. Depending on what you can work out, if they're cooperative, the key is, are they cooperative, not cooperative? Are they reasonable or are they unreasonable? There's no in between. They're one or the other. And from there, then I assess and make a decision. Okay, do I need to engage the attorney to do give them a notice, to get, 30-day, 60-day notice, 3-day notice to pay or quit. 3-day notice is when you're going to advance to an unlawful detainer. An unlawful detainer is a fancy word in California for eviction. It's going to be filed with the courts, but I need to have that right attorney. So many times, I'll tell you, you got me on a hot topic, but also I'm waiting for the room to fill up a little bit. So many times I've seen where property owners literally spend $10, $15, $20,000 on attorney fees, and they've never even filed an unlawful detainer. They've never filed the eviction notice. They didn't do the 3-day pay or quit. The reason why is because they had the wrong attorney, and the attorney just didn't understand the guidelines for that local municipality. And they did a bunch of back and forth, what I would call paper pushing with the tenant, occupant, and or their attorney or their advocate service or the free legal service help. And they've done a bunch of email exchanges, letter writing, and all of that, billing the owner $10,000 or $15,000 with not even really following the right protocols. Why? Because that's not really an eviction attorney. That's a real estate, let me bill, what I call a bill mill. And a bill mill is a law office or an attorney that they're just going to keep the meter running and keep billing the attorney. That was a long answer for for I think an important question, but did that help, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your expertise in that. Appreciate it.
I went deep on that only because it was an opportunity. Plus, now we're 12 after the hour. I'm going to answer one or two quick questions, and then I'm going to get into the presentation. Will, my man. Will Flores, you got the floor, bro.
Hey, so mine is not more a question. It's more a problem that was resolved. Yesterday, I asked you a question about the financing on the construction. Bro, I found an excellent freaking lender.
Sweet.
So, yeah. So if you ever need it, call me now because I got a good place to go.
I love it. Tell this scenario. Tell them who you are, where you're from. Tell them who you are, what you do, where you're from, and then tell them the scenario just briefly in like a 120 second recap.
Yeah, my name is Will Flores. I'm with Mortgage Heroes. I'm specialized in the mortgage side of lending, not the commercial side, but I have a project and a couple of friends have a project where we bought a home and we're looking to construct an ADU. So we need construction costs, which range anywhere from $250,000 to $350,000. And I was having a hard time finding somebody that would allow us, even though I'm in first position on a sub 2, everybody else was trying to refinance the first and give me the construction loan. In this case, I found somebody that allows me to stick with my first, give me the construction with fund controls, and giving me the money enough to lend me on future value. So it was great. And
Love
then
and so now you have that contact.
Yes. Exit strategy is going to be to DSCR the loan right after we're done with it.
God, tell them what a DSCR, because there's a couple people that maybe don't know. Most do, but a couple people may not know.
Gotcha. It's a commercial loan. It's a debt service calculator ratio loan where the rents have to meet whatever the payment's going to be on that investment. So pretty much whatever your net proceeds are, as long as that meets what your payment is, you qualify. It's specialized for investors like us, and there is no income documentation. Is just, asset driven and your current credit score, which is awesome. And it could go into your LLC, which is another phenomenal thing. So.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you, Will. How long have we been working together? How long have we known each other?
Since August, man. It's been nothing but a pleasure and a life changer. So I appreciate you so much, man.
How many deals have you picked up creatively in the last?
I done two. Is we did the Bonita property that you helped me with, and my mother-in-law's home.
Love it. Love it. So there you go. Getting deals done. He's in San Diego, California. He can lend. You lend all over California or all over the U.S.?
Yeah, no, all over California. So it's a really good. I'm so excited because that is very difficult to find that type of financing out there. So when somebody's lending you money on future value, that is powerful.
I love it. Thank you, Will, for being here. Post your contact, your email, and your, like, if somebody needed help with loans or whatever, post your information in the chat just so that it's available for the audience. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks, Roger. He sent me the link, so I appreciate him.
I love it. That's awesome, man.
For brothers, you know what I mean?
Thanks, brother.
Love it.
Kai, can you get to that question about the skip tracing there real quick? That was from last week. Was that the right one? Fast people search, you said, was cheap. Is there
Why don't you ask
similar?
the question and tee it up? Only because it's being recorded. I'm not. By the way, if you're posting questions in the chat, I'm probably going to miss them. Only because I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to look at all 30 people. I want this to really be interactive. And let me tell you also, too, just real quick, I'm going to come back to you, Roger, but real quick, you get what you put out. So, if for you to really learn here, I want you to raise your hand, ask questions, whatever. And it's cool if you don't. I realize sometimes people are just going to listen and learn, but I really want it to be engaged. If there's something you want to talk about or share or just whatever, like, please raise your hand. Let's get you on the mic. So what was it, Roger, that you were asking about, brother?
I put that in the chat for everybody. When you're talking about skip tracing cheap, I think you said it was Fast People Search. You said it was like 70%, if that's the company. Or was there anything else similar that I put in there? Intellius is one. And what else would be similar? Or you're just thinking that's the best for something economical?
They're all using the same data. So there's a bunch of knockoffs and they all look the same. But Fast People Search is free. The other one is called Been Verified, and it's the paid version of Fast People Search. But it's not, the data is not a lot better. There are a couple of little nuances about it. I think they have an app and there's some things like that are on Been Verified. It's the paid version. Those are great for one-offs. This morning, I have an estate. I'm working on a probate deal. There was I talked to somebody. It was a family member. They're not the person in charge. They didn't feel comfortable in giving me the name of the person in charge. But then when I looked up the estate, I could see there were 4 other names, right? And a couple of them had missing phone numbers. What did I do? This is what I call a one-off skip trace. I emailed it to my assistant and said, hey, go on to Fast People Search, see if you can find some phone numbers. And sure enough, he came back. He had probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 phone numbers for each record. So now we'll call those. If you're doing bulk skip tracing, meaning like you've got a list of 200 pre-foreclosures, or you've got a list of 1,000 absentee owners, and you don't want to use Fast People Search. It'll take you 2 days to skip trace. You would use a service like Batch Leads and upload that. And then they're, 10, 12 cents a record, 8 cents a record, something like that. So Batch Leads is pretty dependable for bulk skip tracing. So good question though. Somebody else had, I think Eddie had a question. Where are you, Eddie? Are you still there, bro?
I am. Hello, Ty.
Hey, Eddie, how are you?
Very good, man. I got this link earlier today from Roger. I thought I'd jump in, and I know he told me briefly about this. Just want to make sure that I'm going to be asking questions on the right topics. He was telling me it was creative financing, and I see that some of the questions that are being asked are just pretty much things that are going to lead into possible deals and flips. I guess I can start off by asking, what are some of the more creative financing terms you're getting when you get seller financing?
That's a good question. So we'll get into that. I'm going to come back to you. And actually, that's a good segue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start I'll get into the actual content now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute everybody only for the purpose of no background noise. I'm going to go through, I'm going to explain a couple of things and do some content, and then we'll open it up for questions as we go. So let me just get right into it. I'm going to screen share here, and let's get into, can you see my screen, Roger? The reason I call on you, Roger, is because I can see you. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a lot about how do you explain this to a seller? When you're talking about creative finance, how do you explain this to a seller? What do you actually say, and how do you say it? So we're going to do some role play. Ideally, I'd like to call on a few of you maybe to role play, but we're going to talk about what to say and how to say it. Now, in terms of creative finance, let me get into this way, actually. You can see my screen, Roger? Yep. Okay, cool. All right. So in terms of creative finance, what to say, how to say it. The big thing is if you can explain this right and you know what to say and how to say it, that's going to give you huge, tremendous advantage over 99.9% of all the investors, and especially over all the realtors, because people typically don't understand it enough to explain it. And so I want you, if you are taking notes right now, I want you to write down something. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. It is so important to keep it simple, and we'll get more into what to say and how to say it as we move on. But keeping it simple is an absolute must when you're dealing with creative finance and breaking it down for the seller. Now, there are different types of creative financing. And so I'll go through them. The ones in green, if you're looking and you watch and see my screen, the ones in green are the predominant ones we're going to spend the most time with. The ones in blue are ones almost nobody ever talks about, but are also creative finance techniques. And I'll talk a little bit about each one. So subject to, that's a hot button. We all know if you're on YouTube, some of you are friends of mine, you're a part of the Sub2 community. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram or any social platform, a lot of people, there's all the rage about, subject to, what is it? Now, subject to is basically where you're taking over payments. I'll get into it and I'll explain it a little bit more, but you're basically taking, why is it called subject to? Because you're purchasing the property subject to the existing loans, liens, and/or encumbrances. You're purchasing the property. It actually is a technical word. you would be buying a property subject to the existing liens, loans, and or encumbrances. Now, does that mean you're taking on liens? You don't have to. Some things can be paid off in a transaction if there's, judgments or liens and things like that. But the idea is that you're taking it subject to, know that there's existing liens, encumbrances, and you're taking it subject to those. Okay. I'll get more into subject to. I'm going to spend a lot of time in subject to today. Now, seller financing. What is seller financing? This is where some of the terms we've ever heard, seller carryback, seller financing, seller carryback. This is where the seller, basically, when you're buying it from the seller, they change their position from the owner to now a lender. Okay. They change their position from the property owner to now a lien holder and or a lender. Now, the way I say that, remember, we're going to talk about what to say and how to say it. When I explain this to a seller, and I'm actually explaining this to them, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the benefit here is that you get to upgrade your position from the landlord to the lender. Or I might say it this way, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, with a seller financing transaction, you get to upgrade your position from the owner to the actual lender or the bank. Can I explain? Of course, the seller's going to say, yeah, sure. Well, yeah, explain. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, currently as a property owner, you're responsible for taxes, maintenance, tenants. If there are, we got a little bit of background noise. If you guys can please stay muted, let me just real quick. I'm going to mute everybody again. If you guys can stay muted, and then I'll open it up for questions. Is this helpful so far? Am I on? Sometimes when I'm reading the slides and I'm kind of talking and monologuing, I feel like I'm just talking to myself. So is this helpful? Yeah, good. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. All right. And guys, stay muted if you can. I'll pause. I'll get through some content. I'll pause. I'll Q&A. I'll go through some content. I'll pause. I'll turn off the screen share, and then we'll do Q&A because I want to make sure that people really get this. Okay. And that's why I'm doing it so slow, so simple, but I want to be thorough. Okay. So let's continue. So when I'm talking to a seller, I'm going to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what if we could do seller financing? What is seller financing? This is where we upgrade you from the landlord to the lender. Okay. Well, what do you mean? Well, the idea is that now currently as the owner, you're paying property taxes, you're paying insurance, you're paying any kind of maintenance, repairs, all the upkeep. You have all the responsibility of that. When you sell the property to us on seller financing, you upgrade your position from the owner to now a lien holder. Basically, you become the bank. Can I explain a little more? Yeah, sure. No problem. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is where you now have truly passive income. Now, if you've owned this property for how long have you owned it? Okay, they've owned it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever they've owned it for. Okay, there's a lot more than just paying the mortgage. You have taxes, you have insurance, you have upkeep, you have landscaping, you have repairs, you have surprises. If this is a landlord, hey, you have tenants, toilets, taxes, you have all of these ongoing upkeep. And truly, even as a rental, even if you own it free and clear, guess what? It's not truly passive income. It's a small business. You're operating this property and you still have a tremendous amount of responsibility. Whereas if you sell it to us in seller financing, you now get to upgrade your position from a landlord to the lender. Just like the bank, every month you're getting true passive income. You're getting those monthly payments. And guess what? You're never going to have to worry about taxes or toilets or tenants or maintenance or broken shutters or, a leak in the landscaping or a clogged toilet. You're never going to have to worry about any of that again. Would that be appealing to you, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord? Yes. Okay, great. So we've talked about that. We've talked about how that works. So let's talk about hybrid. What does hybrid mean? Hybrid is where in creative finance, the word hybrid is different things, right? If we're talking about a car, right? We're talking about a Prius or another kind of a hybrid car where it's gas and electric, right? So in the automobile, hybrid it's a gas and electric car. If we use the word hybrid in terms of real estate brokers, realtors, we're talking about a hybrid agent, a hybrid realtor that can, who's an investor who buys, wholesales, fix and flips, buys rental properties, is what I call a transaction engineer. They can buy different ways, many solutions for many problems. That's a hybrid realtor. Okay. In this context right now, what I'm talking about hybrid and creative financing this is where you would combine a subject to transaction with a seller financing transaction. So what does that look like? A subject to financing with seller financing. This is where we would be taking over an existing loan, buying a property subject to an existing loan or other encumbrances, taking over those payments, but also potentially putting the seller's equity in a second position, seller financing, called, again, a seller carryback, seller financing. But in essence, now you might have two loans in this case, in a hybrid. You'd have maybe the first mortgage, they owe $100,000. The payment on it is $800 a month, and you're buying the home for $200,000. And now the seller maybe has an additional $100,000 in a seller carryback. And maybe you're also paying them $800 a month on that carryback. Is this making sense so far for everybody? I'm going to pause real quick. Thumbs up. Everybody with me? Okay, cool. All right. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to move through this, and then I'm going to do Q&A. I'm going to open it up for a little bit of Q&A, and then I've got a lot more. I got, believe me, I got slides behind this. So I'm going a little slow, so forgive me. If you think I'm going slow, hang in there. Let's talk about a wraparound mortgage. A wraparound mortgage is basically just like it sounds. It's a mortgage that wraps around an existing mortgage or mortgages or other liens or encumbrances. The idea with a wraparound mortgage is you're creating a new mortgage, but it's basically like subject to, if they owe $100,000 and the payment's $800, that's going to be bundled into a wraparound mortgage. Okay. Wraparound mortgage is a slang word. And truthfully, a wraparound mortgage and an all-inclusive deed of trust are basically the same thing. The technical term is called an all-inclusive deed of trust, at least here in California. I think that's true in most states. A wraparound mortgage and an all-inclusive deed of trust are basically the same thing. The idea is that we are taking an existing mortgage, as an example, $100,000 first that's already existing, maybe $100,000 second with the seller, and we're bundling that up and we're creating a new mortgage or a new deed of trust. And that now is a new deed of trust for how much? Easy math, $200,000. We've got a first of 100. We've got the seller carryback of 100. We now are creating a new wraparound mortgage or an all-inclusive deed of trust, same thing, of $200,000. Okay. Forgive me if this is slow, but I'm going slow for a reason. Hopefully this is making sense. So wraparound mortgage, all-inclusive deed of trust are the same thing. It's basically bundling like a hybrid. It's taking an existing loan and the seller loan, or maybe even it could be 2 or 3 loans. It could be a first for 100,000. It could be a home equity line of 50,000. And then now it's 50,000 to a seller carryback. And now you're wrapping it around. Now, the reason why I have these in blue versus green, these I don't recommend. I have bought on wraparound or all-inclusive deed of trust, and everything went really well. But I've heard some real nightmare stories about people who've bought on all-inclusive deed of trust. We'll get into that later during the conversation. I would not buy in a wraparound mortgage or an all-inclusive deed of trust unless I absolutely had to do it because I couldn't negotiate anything better. I would always 100% negotiate a subject to deal or a hybrid deal or a seller financing deal. These ones in green are in green for a reason. These are the preferred methods. Now, in blue, a wraparound mortgage and all-inclusive deed of trust. I've also sold on wraparound mortgage or all-inclusive deed of trust. These are good exit strategies. These are good exit strategies for you to potentially sell a property if you chose to do that. I don't recommend that. I think you're much better off to hold on to properties and just rent them, whether that be long-term rental, midterm rental, short-term rental, all of that. Okay. I really think, again, you make money and you create wealth by owning property, not by, buying, fixing, flipping. You make good income or even doing wraparound mortgages. I would prefer to hold the property at least this stage in my life. Maybe when I'm older, 75, now I'm burned out, although some days I am burned out. Joking. But older, if I'm in my 70s, 80s, maybe then I start doing seller financing, wraparound mortgages, all-inclusive deed of trust, because I just don't want to deal with the headaches. But hopefully my kids would want to step in and be a part of the business, and really, because then ultimately they're going to end up with everything anyway, right? So anyway, that's the way wraparound mortgages, all-inclusive deed of trust. I always prefer subject to seller financing and doing a hybrid, subject to with seller finance. Now, lease options. Lease option is just that. You're going to get a tenant. They're going to give you an option, meaning they're going to give you maybe some money toward a down payment. And the idea is that they're going to be a tenant, and maybe potentially they have a 2 or 3 or 4 year window, 5-year window that maybe they need to clean up their credit, or maybe they just came out of a divorce, something like that. A lease option can work, and you could potentially buy properties with a lease option. But the problem is, if you buy with a lease option, you're not going to get the interest write-off. You're not going to get the depreciation write-off, which is really a big value in owning property. But it does allow you to control a property. You could potentially buy properties with a lease option, give the owner option consideration, get a 5-year contract, and then now you sublet, you rent it out, you're making a spread. Maybe there's some people I know that have done that with Airbnbs, short-term rental, midterm rentals. I'm not in that space. I'm not opposed to it, but it would have to be a very unique property. And I'm not for it only because I can take that same seller and almost always buy it on seller financing or subject to financing. So let me talk about an option. A straight option, many times similar to a lease option. This is where same thing, you would give essentially a down payment, money that's non-refundable to a seller, and it would give you the right, not the obligation, meaning you don't have to, but you have non-refundable money, and you now have the right to purchase this property within a set time period. So as an example, where this does make sense and where I would do this, if there was let's say a piece of land that was a development land that I felt like, hey, I could buy this deal, I could develop it, but the seller doesn't want to sell. They just, they don't want to sell it right now. They know that they're probably going to sell it in the next 5 or 10 years. Potentially, I could give them option money, like a down payment, non-refundable money, but I could give them that money, and I have the exclusive right to buy that property. Now, this works incredibly well. The best developers in the country do this. There's a particular guy that I know of, his family, 2 or 3 generations. They own casinos. They own, basically anywhere when I'm driving around Northern California and I see development land, they already have that land. Either they already own it or they have it optioned out. And so it's very common that, someone will go, this is where it makes a lot of sense. Like farmland that's right up next to the city, and there's 50, 100 acres. A developer would come in and say, look, we'll give you $500,000 non-refundable, and we want the right for the next 10 years. And we want an additional 10-year option, meaning we can go as long as 20 years with another $500,000. And they already agree on the price. And so what happens is Now the developer, as things start to develop in the economy and they feel like, okay, now's the time, they can exercise their option. They can go to the owner, that property owner, and say, okay, you know what? We're now going to get this entitled. Options, again, is an advanced move. How it might work with houses is very common. Let's just say you do property management. Let's just say, because I know some realtors do property management, and you have an owner and they're really not ready to sell, but they know that they're going to have to sell in the next 3 to 5 years, and they really like you. You're doing a great job managing. You could potentially say, hey, look, what if I were to give you an option? I give you $10,000 now, and then, sometime within the next 3 to 5, let's say 5 years, 7 years, you sell the property to me at this price, and you pre-negotiate a price that's equitable for you, but also equitable for the seller. That's a nice way to do it. That's a nice way to do it. Again, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about options, but I want to throw it out there. And the last one is novation, the novation. And let me go back to that. The novation. The novation I love. The novation I love. And this is where you contract with the seller. You don't take title. You could basically, it's very similar to an option, but basically what you're doing is almost like a joint venture with the seller, but it's important that you have the right paperwork. Paperwork is everything. Next week, we'll talk about paperwork, contracts. Here are the contracts to use, or I'm going to show you disclosures, acknowledgements, all of that. Next week will be all about the paperwork. Today, though, we're just going to do an overview of the actual what to say, how to say it, but also give you some knowledge on what's available. The novation's beautiful, where I find a seller, and as an example, they're really stuck. They want $700,000 for the house. And on a cash deal, on a fix and flip deal, I know that I can maybe do 625. I might be able to do 640, 650. There's no way I can do 700,000. Okay. It just doesn't pencil. They're stuck on 700. I'm stuck on 625. Okay. How do we bridge the gap? This was a recent deal. And again, these are vague numbers, but a novation deal that I'll give you an example. We contracted the deal for approximately 675. It might have been 680. It might have even been 700. Again, this is here in the Bay Area. But we agreed with the seller. We said, look, we'll give you your number or close to it. But here's what we want to do. We'll guarantee you the price. And what we want you to do is give us 120 days. 120 days escrow period, time period, a novation period. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you, in this case, I believe we gave them 10,000, maybe 20,000 down. Here's earnest money, non-refundable. We'll get credited that in the close of escrow. We're going to give you non-refundable money. You're going to give us 120 days. And what we're going to do is we're going to fix the house up. And then we're going to resell it. And the word novate means to replace or to basically substitute in a new buyer. So the idea is that here's how the novation will work, Mr. Seller, is that we're going to guarantee you your price of 680 or 700. Again, I'm going off of memory. We're going to fix it all up in the next 45 days, 60 days, and then we're going to turn around and sell the property for a profit. You're going to get your guaranteed $700,000. We're going to give you $10,000 earnest money, non-refundable. So if we are not able to do this within 120 days, you get to keep our money. Okay, but you're getting a guarantee of this price. Would you let us fix the house up and resell it? And so the seller said, yes. I think we put in about 180,000, and we ended up having a profit of about 280, 85, 89. We sold the house for like 1.1 million. So minus construction cost, the guaranteed buyout to the seller, commissions, transfer taxes, all of that. We ended up doing really well with that. Now, again, what is a novation? It's basically where the seller will give you a set period of time. You give them a non-refundable money, and now you basically fix the house up, resell it, and you have negotiated where you get to keep the spread or keep the margin. Okay. So with that said, novation, option, lease option, all-inclusive deed of trust, wraparound mortgages, those are on the right side. Those are not common. And again, I will do novations. Actually, novation should probably be highlighted in green. It really should be probably highlighted in green. In fact, I'm going to highlight it in green, and I'll tell you why, because I love novations. Novations are incredibly profitable. So let me just share this. Let me go back to this in here, and I'll just real quick. So I love novations. Novations are awesome. Novations should be on the left side here. These other ones, wraparound mortgage, all-inclusive deed of trust, lease options, options great, but typically options really make the most sense if you're doing land development. So let me open it up for questions. This is the time for Q&A. Please raise your hands. Was I making any sense? I hope I was making some sense. I hope you guys were getting it. I hope this made sense. I got some more slides and some more examples, but let's open it up. Let's do about 5-7 minutes of Q&A. Who has questions?
Hey, Ty. It's Yvette.
Hey, Yvette. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Glad you're here.
The wrap, I know you don't use it too often, but I just was trying to figure out an example of when that would even be needed for a seller situation.
Got it. So that great question. And it's great because I've done all of these. So it's not like I'm not telling you like theory stuff. This is real deal. So, and by the way, my folks bought a house in like 83 subject to, although they didn't call it subject to back then. So I've been following subject to creative financing since the 80s and 90s. Bought my first sub 2 deal in 94. Anyway, that kind of fast forward. I was so used to buying deals subject to and creatively that I was like, I would never buy a house on a wraparound mortgage or an all-inclusive deed of trust. And that's what you asked about, right? So this is the example. I just got married. I was newly married. And I go on this beautiful honeymoon, and my wife and we go to a Tony Robbins Date with Destiny event on our honeymoon or before our honeymoon. And we set all these crazy goals. Like, we want to live in this neighborhood. We want to have these kind of cars, this kind of life, and live like this. And we set this crazy goal. We want to live in this like multi-million-dollar neighborhood. And it was like a total stretch. We were not there. We were doing really well and on our way, but it wasn't like, well, we come back from the event, and within 90 days, I have this creative deal, this highly motivated seller fall in my lap. The guy, his wife had passed away. He's burned out. His kids are grown. He raised his kids already in this house. He's going back to where he's from. And he had bought the house creatively on a wraparound mortgage from a guy that was an airline pilot. Okay. I wanted the deal. I was like, oh my God, this is like at that time, the best neighborhood I'd ever known of. And like in our local market. And I'm like, I really want this house. My wife wanted it. We went and looked at it. It was like paint carpet, a little TLC. The house was macking, right? The best neighborhood. And I tried to negotiate with the seller. The seller himself was subject to all day. He was like, look, if I can just get like 10 grand or 5 grand, I don't remember the number, I'll walk away today. Like, he's just like, I just need money to move. I just need enough to pay the movers and get packed up and get on my way. He goes, I don't even want anything. I'm out of here. I'm done. But the guy that he bought from, smart investor, the guy's from a place called Mercer Island in Washington, the state of Washington, Seattle. That's where Thatch lives now, is Mercer Island. Mercer Island and Bellevue are like Beverly Hills of Seattle. That's the place to live. This guy lived there. He's an airline pilot, wheeler dealer. And he's like, and I'm telling him, hey, look, I'll just buy it subject to, I'll just take over that existing loan, take you out of the picture. And he's like, nah, I just can't sell it that way. I just can't sell it that way. You know what? I have to do it. We'd have to do it. I have to stay in the deal and make sure that you make the payments, because that's my credit. And I said, and I tried to negotiate, and I said, okay, because I was in love with the house and I had to have the deal, I was like, okay, I will do the all-inclusive deed of trust. But one caveat, I'm going to make the payment directly to the bank, not to you, Mr. Seller. Most all-inclusive deed of trust, the money's going directly to the seller or a servicer, which is controlled by and directed by the seller, because technically in an all-inclusive deed of trust, also known as a wraparound mortgage, technically the person with the boss strings is the seller because they own the note. Therefore, they direct the servicer. Typically, they're collecting the payments. And here's the horror story. I had been in the business enough and had been around creative finance enough. I would see where some construction worker guy, Hispanic dude, broken English, he would buy a house on an all-inclusive deed of trust or wraparound and had made his payments religiously for 18 months. And what would happen is the seller would basically at some point just start pocketing the money and stopped paying the first mortgage. And now all of a sudden, that guy, the home buyer of the all-inclusive deed of trust, was getting a knock on the door. Hey, you're in default, blah, 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 blah. We're about to foreclose. What are you talking about? I've been making my payments. And it would turn into this big, not a good story. So if I was going to do a wraparound mortgage, it would have to be I would really have to be in love with the deal and desperately want it. Here's the problem though, with an all-inclusive deed of trust. And I also bought one where this was a problem. I was still making the payments direct, not to the seller, but to the bank, but the seller disappeared and I couldn't find him. And I was going to sell the property or refinance. I don't remember, but in order with an all-inclusive deed of trust or a wraparound, it's going to require whoever is that beneficial interest or the trustee, the seller, if you go to sell it or refinance it 2 or 3 years down the road, even if you're making the payments directly to the first mortgage, that all-inclusive deed of trust sits on county record as a mortgage or as a deed, and it's going to require a signature from that party. So we've had where they went missing. That was another horror story. And you can't find it, or we had to like hire a private detective. And then on top of it, then the people even shook me down and was like, well, you know, because all of a sudden now the property value went up. Now all of a sudden it wasn't worth much. There wasn't a lot of equity when I bought it, but now there's $100,000 of equity. Well, God, you're making all this money and I da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, look, I'll give you $5,000, sign the paperwork. Otherwise I'm going to give the $5,000 to my attorney and we're going to get into a lawsuit. Like, what do you want? You want sign now, $5,000 or $5,000 to the attorney and we just sue you, which really defeats everything I was trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. Okay.
That's why you do not buy on a wraparound mortgage. You buy subject to or all-inclusive deed of trust. You don't buy on those. And even when you do, you've got to have these safeguards and you got to know they're a dependable person.
Right. Right.
You know, they can't be somebody that's kind of, you know, down and out or whatever. Like it has to be somebody that, you know, that because in the end, they're still going to have to sign off when you go sell. Or they're going to have to be, they're still going to be involved.
It's got to be a really special case and you got to really want it. So
you got to really want that property. Correct. Otherwise you want to control the title and through subject to, through seller financing or hybrid financing, you control the title. So I hope that made sense for everybody. Let me know, thumbs up if you got your camera on. Cool. Let's do some more questions.
Thanks, Ty.
I threw a lot at you guys, but that's what I want to do is I want to over deliver. So, you know, I hope this is, my slides are not pretty, but if you're really taking notes and learning, I'm breaking it down. I'm going to give you real, and all this stuff I've done. I'm not some guy that I didn't read this in a book or learn this, you know, like this is real stuff. This is all I've done my whole adult life. So more questions.
Brother Ty, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Ra?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right,
Good.
man. Thank you for doing this Zoom, man. This is a really big helper. I just actually had one question. As far as novations are concerned, you ever been in a situation where, or if you can tell me what kind of penalties do you place in a contract if you happen to fix it up, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe the seller goes behind your back and might want to sell it to somebody else, or I don't know if you ever been through a scenario like that. I'm just curious.
100%. I've been there many times. So here's what you do is, in a novation, the most important thing is you're dealing with people that are straight up. In a novation, who the seller is and how they are, they have to be really straight up. They have to be clean, operating, forthright type people. If they're in any way suspect, if they seem undependable, unreliable, slightly shady, or slightly, I don't even know the word. Shady is probably the best word. If you sense any of that, that is not someone you're going to do a successful. You're going to have a problem at. You're going to get a lesson, most likely. Not 100%, but I'm just telling you, people matter. 100% of the time, the people matter. And like, if they seem a little bit shady or a little bit disingenuous or even kind of unreasonable, antagonistic, aggravation, any of that stuff, you're going to be in for a long road. Even though your paperwork could be 100%, your paperwork could be 100% right, but you're still going to need that seller to cooperate, because in the end, in a novation, they've still got to sign. They still got to sign. And it's very likely that they're going to see their number and your number. When they go to sign a settlement sheet, not like an assignment or like a wholesale deal where sometimes you have blind HUDs where, you're getting paid a fee from the buyer or whatever. The seller doesn't see that. I don't know if that's all the case everywhere. I don't really care, because I tell the seller, hey, I'm going to be making a fee. But point being is that when they see your number, and if your number is significantly bigger than theirs, which it usually is, it could, if they're unreasonable, if they're slightly antagonistic, aggravating, unreasonable, shady at times, unreliable, meaning like you guys have an advanced agreement. Hey, I'm going to call you today at 4. We'll go ahead and we'll talk about it. You call them at 4. You call them again at 4:05. You call them. Next thing you know, you're chasing them for the next week. And then you text them, you call them, and then finally they get back to you. And you go through a series of those. We all know sellers like that are slippery. And it's not because they're bad people. It's not because their intent is malicious. It's because maybe they have a chaotic life. God bless them. Probably not the right person to do innovation with, because when you're going to resell that deal, they've got to participate. And ideally, they should have some skin in the game. Hopefully they're getting a nice chunk of cash, and hopefully they're getting enough, or you have a good relationship with them that even when they see on the settlement statement, you're getting $100,000 or $50,000, and they're getting, you're getting $100,000 and they're getting $25,000, or you're getting $70,000 and they're getting $5,000 or $10,000. Hopefully your relationship and your integrity and your communications with them are such that they're going to be okay and be like, hey, let's, like, it's not, yeah, thank you, man. I'm glad you got me out of this or whatever. Now, here's why I say that. Why those are real numbers, by the way. And it isn't that you're netting $70,000 or $100,000. You probably have, if you're getting a check for 70, you probably have $35,000, $45,000, $50,000 in construction. Hopefully I didn't freeze. You guys still there? Are you guys with me? Okay, cool. So if you're getting a check for $100,000 and they're getting a check for $25,000 on a novation, you probably have, again, $50,000 or $60,000, $70,000 in construction recapture, right? So that's an important thing. So now from a technical standpoint, your contracts, noting all of this, everything's in writing. It's very ironclad, 100% critical. Also, what I would recommend is you record an option agreement on public record, a notarized, when you're doing the initial contract. You're also doing, not 2 weeks from now after you've already started construction, but you're recording either a deed of trust or a notice of interest against the property. And what that will do is that will cloud title so that they can't go around you. That's the technical, how you protect yourself. You record a notice, a memorandum of agreement, a notice of interest, an option agreement, different things in different states. But you record that, signed by the seller, that this is being recorded. It puts the public on notice, and no title company is going to record. And you can talk with your title people what they would prefer. Hey, I'm going to do this agreement. I'd want to record an option, a notice of interest. What do we do here in this county? Okay, so that's an important piece. That was a thorough, long answer, but I want to keep you guys out of hot water. The big thing is the relationship. Hopefully you guys got that. Hopefully that made sense. More questions?
I have a question, Ty.
Go for it, Norman.
Yeah, when you were saying about an innovation that hopefully the seller has some skin in the game, could you elaborate on that?
Well, the idea is that, you know, as an example, so the house, the 680 or 675 or the $700,000 house I made mention of, that guy owned the house free and clear. So he owned it free and clear. By the way, he was a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
He was a contractor. He owned the house free and clear. He demoed most of the house. It was kind of a project, and it just sat there, tall grass, all of this. And what it was is he was just tired. He's got a couple of young kids. The guy's like late 50s, early 60s, kind of burned out a little, you know, and just got tired of the project, was trying to get permits, felt like the city was giving him a runaround because he's an old school contractor. And so in this case, when we got our check for 200 and whatever it was, 285 or 87 or 89,000, he got a check for whatever it was, 680 or whatever. Like, he got a big check. So, you know, there was no way, like, there was absolutely no way that he was not going to sign that. He did make some little smart remarks to me, though. Friendly. He's called and referred people to me, but he made some like, oh man, I should have stayed in the deal with you guys. I should have, you know what I mean? He's like, I should have, you know, like, cause I think even at one point we offered him to stay in the deal or something. And I don't remember that because somebody else brought the deal to me and I put it together. But point being is that he had said something like, ah, man, like almost like, gosh, I should have probably did the deal myself kind of thing. Or I should have partnered with you instead of, you know, cause I think maybe that was something we offered. Maybe the guy before me offered where it was like, hey, we'll guarantee you your price. And then everything above that price, all the construction costs will get reimbursed. And then everything above it will split 50-50. And I think that might've been pitched to him. And I think he regretted it, but it didn't matter. He signed. Why? Because he's getting a big fat check. Where I'm concerned is where somebody's getting $5,000. Like, let's just say somebody's getting 5,000. Somebody's called me and said, oh man, I got a problem. I had somebody else. I don't remember who it was, but he's like, oh dude, these sellers, they don't want to sign now. And I'm like, why? And he goes, well, I'm getting, you know, I'm making 20,000, but I'm getting a check for, you know, I don't remember, but it was like 70,000, but that most of it's construction. And he goes, the seller's only getting $5,000. And I'm like, why wouldn't you have just done the deal subject to? Give the seller their $5,000 and just take over the existing loan. If they were getting so little money, why would you keep them in the deal? See, also, that's why everything on the right side was in blue. That's why I put everything in blue. I was trying to think, remember how everything on the right side of the slides was blue. Everything on the left side was green. That's why novation was not on the other side. And the reason why is everything on the right side has degrees of complication that if you were buying that way, the seller still has involvement. You don't have complete control. Everything on the left side, everything that was green, if I go to this, let me go back to the chart actually, because now I know. Everything over here on the left side, all the green stuff, you control title. That's cool. I didn't even do that on purpose. I just wrote it out that way, but I guess unconsciously I was thinking of a reason. Everything here on the left, you control title. Everything on the right still involves the seller. So, you know, you still have to have seller cooperation in here. But here's the beauty of it. I will go back and make that blue. Right? So I'll make the novation blue again because everything on the blue requires the seller to be involved. You're going to if you have the seller involved after the transaction, that can create complication. Now, if you have a good relationship, no problem. But I do love novations. Novations are great. Novations are great. And by the way, if you put blue and yellow together, what color does it make? Does anybody know? Anybody remember when they had Crayolas? I got young kids, so they got crayons.
Green,
baby. Green. Show me the money. Show me the money, honey. So yeah, so blue and yellow make green. Blue and yellow make green. So, but everything in blue involves the seller. Everything in green, you control title, or whoever, the buyer controls title. Because I know we got realtors. Some of you are going to hopefully learn how to do these deals to put deals together for your, for clients, but really you should be learning how to put these deals together so you can put some of these deals together for yourself. Build it, build, a handful of rentals, one rental at a time. Michael Zuber. Buy a handful of rentals, buy a bunch of rentals, build an empire, because this is the season. This next 18, 24 months, you can create a lot of wealth. This to me reminds me of like talking about the late 1900s, 1998. The market was kind of weird. Then we had 9/11. 9/11 was really weird because the market, everybody thought the economy was going to collapse. 2001, 9/11. And then all of a sudden, the market took off like a rocket ship, right? So this is kind of like the late 90s right now. It's kind of a weird time, but a great time to be in creative finance. So let me continue because I want to just go through all the slides, and then I'll stay as long as people have questions. So yes, this is being recorded. I'll send out the replay at sometime tonight or tomorrow morning. Let's continue.
Thanks, Ty.
Is this helpful?
Yes, sir.
Extremely.
Thank you.
So Ty, this is Katrina. I have a question or an example. I have a homeowner, it's a husband and wife.
Okay.
They're divorcing.
Yep.
They are required by the courts to sell the property and split the equity.
Sure.
They owe, I'll just, for example's sake, they owe 100,000. Property is worth about 500,000.
Okay.
However, it needs some work, and one of the spouse just wants his portion of the equity out of the property, and he really would like to leave the house to the mom and the children. The children want to buy it, but they can't afford to buy it because the son and the daughter who would be purchasing the property, the son just got laid off and the daughter doesn't make enough. What strategy would work where the spouses could get the equity out of the property and the children could buy the property from or have the property transferred?
So based on a couple of things, one, to me, just to be really clear, so the children / the people that want to keep the property really don't have jobs and have income or the ability to go out and borrow money. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And they don't have the ability to really pay.
The son is in construction, and so he had the ability to pay, and then his job went away. He's about to get another job, and the daughter, her income is just not enough.
Got it. Okay. To me, they don't sound like good buyers or good borrowers.
Yes.
Or the right people to be taking over this property, just based on what you said. So I want to be really clear. They don't sound like ideal, but the only way that they're going to get the equity out of the property is one of 2 or 3 ways. One, they sell the property outright. We know that. That's very obvious. They'll get the equity out. Husband will take his half. Wife will take her half. That's number one. Number 2 is that sounds like the mother, the kids are not good borrowers, so they would not have the ability to refinance and buy dad out. However, dad could refinance, do a smaller refinance. He could pay off the 100,000, refinance the other, let's call it 200, get a new loan for 300,000, pay off the $100,000 first. Now there'd be a new loan in place for 300,000. The problem I don't like about it, but it's a possibility. In theory, he gets his $200,000 equity out, right? Which is rightfully his, 200 plus or minus. He gets the cash, and then the mom and the daughter and son can stay there and pay. Now, the reason I don't like the deal is because he's probably going to have to borrow at 6.5% or 6.25% or whatever today's, the rate is. So I don't think that's ideal. Let me finish only for sake of time. I don't think that's ideal, but it's a possibility. Still probably affordable. $300,000 on a $500,000, even at 6.5%, or, is still probably manageable if they have income. And in fact, I would guess that it's probably, going to be in line with what, or less than what they would have to rent for a similar house, for a $500,000 house. So that could work. Outside of that, I don't really see a creative option unless he's just willing to walk away with a promise and a deed of trust that says, okay, here's a $200,000 second loan that I'm going to put on there as a seller, and that my wife and kids will pay the first mortgage. They'll service the existing loan. The $200,000, maybe they're making them some monthly payments. Maybe there's a balloon that they're going to refinance it in 2 or 3 years or 5 years or whatever the case may be. But in terms of him getting his equity out, the only way that I really see is an outright sale, or for him to refinance and put a new loan on it for about $300,000 plus or minus. Please give me a thumbs up if you guys followed along with that math and those solutions. Okay, cool. Did that help, Katrina?
It did help. And in his situation, he just wants to be removed from the liability, and he wants to just give the wife his equity and be done with it. So
he could just sign it over and she takes over the 100,000. I mean, that's easy, but he's not going to get his equity out.
Exactly. And
the only way he's going to get his equity out is to refinance it, which allows them to stay, or they do an outright sell.
Right.
So if he's adamant about it, and there's a lot of equity there, so he does have some they both have some options. So
right. Okay.
What city is the property in?
It's in San Pablo.
Okay. That's a strong 500,000 in San Pablo is a strong market. They definitely could get a loan, a $300,000 loan. If he were to leave his name on the loan or refinance, get a new, that definitely the payment on 300,000 at 6.5% is definitely going to be lower than what rent would be for them. So 100%, 100%, that would be the best option to help the family and for him to get his equity out. But his credit's on the line.
Exactly. And he doesn't want that.
Yeah. So, Joe, I'm going to come back to you, Joe. I'm not going to forget about you, but I want to let me finish these slides only for sake of time.
Okay.
So
thank you, Ty.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to come to you, Joe. You're definitely up. So we talked about the different possibilities here. Let me continue. So what is TOP? Take over payments. That's really what we're doing with the subject to. And the reason why I use TOP is because that was not so much now, but that was a popular term in the automobile industry. And I'll share with you and I'll show you. There was a very popular, and it's still actually popular, maybe not as popular, but swap a lease. Swap a lease, I believe, came around in about 1998, 99 as the new internet 1.0, the first internet was being released. And this was a car company, not a car company, but almost like a marketplace where, and I love the tagline. I didn't know that this was their tagline. You want out, I want in. And I love that. I found this online. I found the image online. But I'll tell you, here's the deal with swap a lease. What I love about it is that this tagline, you want out and I want in, that's really the motto of a subject to deal or a creative deal. It's where somebody wants out and you know what? I want in. I'm willing to take over those payments. And I want to say it in such a simple form and simple way so that you guys really understand what's really happening. You're basically just taking over the loans. You're taking over the payments, TOP. You're taking over the payments like a car, like a swap a lease where somebody wants out and you want in. And that's really that simple. Now, the beauty is I went to the swap a lease website and I love this. Now they have two different options, right? This is the pop-up swap a lease, a great place to sell your car. And they've got, one or two. I'm looking to get out of my lease. I'm looking to take over a lease. I'm looking to get out. I'm looking to get in, right? It really is that simple. And I love, they've got, look, not only that, but when Swap Lease came out, they specialized in highline cars. Now there's everything on there. And in fact, the truth is they sold the company, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I may or maybe not, maybe they still own the same group, but the group that sold it, it's really lost its flair and it's just become a general marketplace like Auto Trader or cars.com. There's a bunch of different cars. Most of it's resale. There's dealers on there. It's become just another marketplace for automobiles. But the reason I showed you guys this initial track and this initial intent was this was a thing. This was a super dope thing. And it was new and it was cutting edge. And specifically, it was for like high-end cars. So as an example, I did a swap lease on a car. There was a time, it was, I don't know, 2004, 2005. I was like, man, I'm going to go out and I was going to buy a convertible Mercedes SL, the two-door hardtop, but I didn't want anyone. I wanted like the AMG wheels, supercharged, the baddest, right? The baddest AMG SL, right? The 55. And so, I was looking at them and I'm like, man, this is $130,000 car. I could buy it. I could buy it outright, whatever. And then I like looked at leasing it and I was like, well, no, then it's like, 60 months or 36 months. And so what I did was, and I'm telling a metaphor, I'm storytelling now to make this really easy to understand. What did I do? Hey, my buddy told me, hey, there's this thing called Swap Lease. Check it out. I go on there. I find a black on black SL 55. Not only that, it's got custom wheels. He's got the original wheels in his garage, the original, the original factory wheels, but he's got custom wheels, custom exhaust, black, red interior, which I would never buy, but because it was Swap Lease, this was the beauty. No money to the seller. And all I did was come in and take over his payments. Here was the beauty of it. Now with a car, this was the beauty of it. Not the same with the house, but this was the beauty with the car. I wasn't committing to 36 or 60 months of lease payments. I came in and he had like, I think 14 or 15 months left on his lease. Plus he put a big amount of money down. In the last 2 or 3 years, at the end of the lease, I actually would have probably made a lot of money. In this case, at the end of the lease, I basically took over the lease payments and I drove the hell out of that car and I had a ball, 13, 14, 15 months. Even the day before I turned it in, I got a speeding ticket doing 100 and I don't know, whatever. I was doing 100 plus. The guy said, oh, I'm going to do you a favor so you don't have to go to jail. I'm going to write it up for whatever, right? Like that whole thing. Oh, thanks for doing me a favor, man. But anyway, point being, I got to drive that car for like 14 or 15 months, $1,300 a month. I took over the payments, but guess what? At the end of the lease, I could have refinanced it, whatever, or I could have turned it in, right? I turned it in, right? But it was great. And that's the beauty of, that's what subject to is. That's where we're taking over payments now. But here's the beauty. In most cases, there's no term. Now, some sellers are going to say, hey, I want a term. I want you to refinance or pay that off within 36 months or 50, 60 months, within 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be. But just know that that's what creative financing is. It's essentially taking over payments. And it really is that simple. So let's go to Joe. Let's wrap up with some Q&A. If you guys have questions, I'm here to answer, but I want to really just keep this so simple. And I think I had you write that down when I started on the talking points. Keep it simple. Are there more details? Yes. Are there more, specific line item things within the agreement, things that you're going to want to make sure? Yeah, we're going to talk about contracts next week. So we'll get into the nitty gritty of contractual obligations, disclosures. What are the sellers committing to? What are you committing to? Who's obligated for what? We'll get into all that next week. Next week's all about contracts. It's all about the paperwork. Today, I want you to get the concept. Keep it simple. You're just taking over payments. You're just taking over payments. So, Joe, go for it, brother.
Hey, brother. Appreciate you. Hopefully you can hear me fine. 2 questions. It could be 3.
Please.
You know how I go. With subject to, and I've listened to a few of Pace's stuff, haven't gone through all of the material, but specifically in your experience and what you've done, have you ever left a homeowner in a subject to deal?
I have.
And could you tell me what that looks like? And I'm asking for very specifically, there's a foreclosure in Orange County or Orange, California, that's going to be going to auction on the 19th. I've talked to the guy a few times. He wants to stay in the house. He needs like 35 grand to get it current. He owes 400 on the property. And there's probably about, after ARV and everything, after everything's fixed up, it could go for 950 for the comps, ran the comps and everything in that area. And it probably would take about 100 to get into it. So there was two things that I was looking at specifically. If he does go to complete foreclosure, trying to buy it on auction, which I haven't done before. So I'd love to hear your input on that. But more specifically, I was even going to sign it and work with another investor as well, just to see if he was willing to take like 200,000, and I would probably take about 50 on it and not have it listed and just bring in an investor and buy it like off market. So just want your take on it.
What market is the house in?
Orange County, OC, in the OC.
Okay. I'd be interested in working with you and helping you on it if you need help. So if it's, yeah. So let me the first question is, have I ever left an owner in it? Yes. Did I regret it? I absolutely regretted it. And in fact, probably, I had a handful of lawsuits that, were from that. And here's why, is because you got to remember, there was something I said about people in general. Like when you're doing transactions, it's important to deal with people that are reasonable and, all of those things. And granted, this guy or gal or people, they could be very reasonable and all that and just hit bad times. My concern though, is that when you leave them in the house, now think about it this way. If you leave them in the house and they didn't pay $35,000 and they've got an auction date, when?
The 19th. Oh, I'm totally on board with what you're saying. There's no, we're on the same exact page. It was more of a validation. That's what I was being somewhat assumptive because I haven't,
right.
I didn't ask Pace directly ultimately.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying this because I think you know this, but I'm saying it so the 18 and then the recording.
Oh, I forget. Yeah.
Is that it's so obvious, right? Like,
apologies.
It's kind of a, what do they call it? Rhetorical question, right? If they haven't paid $35,000 and you leave them in there, what's the likelihood of you having problems with them as tenants, either soon after you saved them or saved the house, and or down the road, if you kept them as tenants? Probably very likely. Now, here's the other thing that I'll say here.
Mm-hmm.
When I had done those before, that was back in like 97, 98, 99, 2001, something like that. In 2023, the way that the courts in California and the way that politically, the way that things have kind of turned, like basically, because here's what's going to happen when they file a lawsuit, when you start to try to evict them, they're going to wait till the very last minute. And I'm saying, if you left somebody in the house, and I want to just say this so everybody knows this, you buy the house, you get a pretty good deal or a great deal, and you agree to let the seller stay in the house as a tenant. And they pay the first month, and they pay the second month, and they pay the 6th month. And all of a sudden on the 7th month, they stop paying. You go, you talk to them. Now they start, you get down to an eviction. The week before the eviction, when they get that final notice, kind of like you're saving them from the foreclosure and trustee sale, right? Now all of a sudden, now they're getting the notice that, hey, court is, or the sheriff's going to come and lock you out, right? The sheriff lockout is going to happen next Wednesday, kind of like the auction date now. Okay. And this is in the future. Well, guess what they do? They go get an attorney and they lawyer up. And then what they say is, this guy tricked me. He manipulated me. He convinced me. He forced me. I never even signed those documents. I don't even know those. I don't even know what he's talking about. No, this is all a fraud. This is all a scam, whatever. They never paid off the loan, all of this stuff. And now they're going to tie you up and they're going to get a stay on the property. and they're potentially going to now, you're going to be tied up in litigation for who knows, right? Maybe you'll settle, give them another 10 grand to move out, or who knows, right? Who knows? Like maybe it goes on for 18 months. So moral of this story is you brought up a good point. Don't leave sellers in the property. I just don't recommend it. I mean, there might be exceptions to the rule, you know, but I just generally do not like it at all. I would highly encourage you. Those have been some of my most troublesome transactions ever. With regard to the trustee sale, that's an advanced league thing. I think you just got to be really straightforward. Say, hey, look, it's not going to work. The investors I've talked to, it just no investor is going to, you know, why don't you get some money and get a fresh start? You know, why don't we buy the property? You know, if we could just write you a check, you owe 500,000. I forgot the number, but you owe, let's say you owe 500,000. You got a trustee sale on the 19th. You know, if we could just write you a check, net in your pocket, what do you need to walk away today? And you got to get them on that track of fresh start. And again, one of the promises of today, as I was going to teach you guys what to say and how to say it. If I could help you get some cash, get out of this house before the foreclosure auction and get some money in your pocket so that you can go secure a place to rent short term, get back on your feet. You'll buy another home. You'll be okay. Get yourself back on your feet. Get your credit cleaned up. Let's get this. You don't want a foreclosure. You're going to have foreclosure or bankruptcy is going to stay on your credit for 7 years. Let's get you some money out of this property and get you a fresh start. If I could get you some money, if we could just get you my investors to write you a check today, what would you need in your pocket? That's the real question. If you want to collaborate on it, you can email me all the details, ty@tylg.com. But again, you can do it on your own or work with other people, all good. But I would love to work with you on it. I'm, you know, if the guy's motivated, I'm happy to get on a call. Or also John Sump is here. He's one of my partners that we collaborate on stuff. John or myself could help you and get on the call. So does that help, Joe?
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. And then this is the second part to the question, separate one as well. There's 2 more properties that I'm targeting right now, and they're $1 million+ properties. So they're like $5 million range. They owe $2 million. It's worth $5 billion. They're literally on the beach. What's your approach on that? You know, I'm gonna, you know, it's a little bit higher end, I guess, in a sense, and I'm gonna go direct to seller. Obviously that's what I've been doing. It's been working, you know, door knocking and going out there and leaving stuff and following back up. It's actually been pretty good.
Are these in pre-foreclosure?
These are in pre-foreclosure notice of default. So it's been about 20 days so far. Same
conversation. Just stop by, see when you might be selling or if you'd be open to an offer.
Okay.
Same conversation, guys. Remember something, again, I started the call and I'll end the call. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's the same conversation. The $5 million person is, and in fact, talking to a $5 million or $2 million default is probably going to be easier than talking to a $500,000 and the reason why is because that person probably knows real estate and knows subject to and knows creative. How do you think they got there? Even if they're in tech or finance or auto or, you know, other industries, how do you think they got in that, you know, $5 million property? They know a little bit about this. And this is interesting too, by the way. And I know one of the boogeymen, right? One of the, you know, excuses in the, you know, in the closet that we're all like, well, man, people aren't going to do this because they don't understand it. And when you talk to old school landlords, right? The landlords that people that have been around a while, and I consider myself, I'm 51 and like my mentors, all these guys are all in their 60s, 70s, 80s now, or have passed. And all of these guys, all the people that own property, especially if they've been around and landlording for a while, they know they bought property subject. They might not have called it subject to, but they understand. I guarantee you they know what wraparound mortgage is. They know what, you know, and I don't bring it up because I don't want to, like I said, I'm trying to buy on the green. I'm trying to, you know, I want to buy subject to or seller finance. But point being is that keep it simple. It's just conversations, talking to people.
Perfect. And I think that's the last thing. You've had experience buying auction properties because, you know, I'm looking to pick it up if they do go to auction. Do you do that or you just focus solely on?
We do. and we are working on buying one, but I have a partner that he's actually, it's funny, I had a hard meeting at 1 o'clock and I literally see my phone blowing up. So
Sorry.
no worries.
Apologies.
I didn't know. I just lost track of time. It's all good, but I'm fully present with you guys. I've got a partner who he's in his 70s and he has been buying and selling for, I don't know, 40 years, 50 years. And he knows trustee sales back in the day, you know, back in the 80s recession, back in the 90s recession, back in the 2008. That's all he did. So I do those deals with him. And even I wouldn't go out by myself and buy trustee sales, without him. So I would do them with him. We have a couple that we're looking at right now, but I do those deals with him. Why? Because he knows, because I just don't want to, because that's the advanced senior league stuff. So
Leaving money on the table, because that's what I was thinking. I'm trying to have a catch-all: realtor license, buy the deal, wholesale it, creative finance,
all the above,
and then pick it up if they do go to foreclosure. They don't want to do it. I already have the inside scoop on a few of these houses. Why not try to pick them up for cheap if I can? So I can certainly partner with you on those if you'd like, or anyone.
Yeah, I'm interested. Reach out, send me an email with some deal points, folks. I've got to run.
Yep,
so
no
thank
worries.
you guys for being here.
Appreciate
I
you.
will send out the replay next week. We will be on Thursday, same time, 12 p.m. I'm going to schedule 90 minutes for next week. I really screwed up on this, not with you guys, but with someone else, but that's okay, guys. Hey, it's all about goodwill. I'm here for contribution. If you have deals or other questions, like if there are questions about the class, wait till next week. If you have specific deals and things, whatever, email me, and I will get back to you guys. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.